All right, so today we're really going to dig into this whole residential home, older adult care work thing.
Sounds good.
You brought like a career guide, and
Yeah.
we've got interview tips, even some stuff on how tech is changing things up in this field.
Right.
So, like, are you ready to unpack all of this and figure out what this job really is?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those careers that often gets overlooked,
Uh-huh.
but it's becoming more and more important, especially as our population ages.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And you know what jumped out at me just looking at these materials? They use the phrase counsel and support right away, like right off the bat. And that tells me this is about more than, just like the practical care stuff.
Absolutely. It really is about connecting with the residents personally,
Yeah.
understanding what they need emotionally, being someone they can turn to for comfort.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit more. The career guide actually lists out the core functions of a residential home, older adult care worker.
Okay.
And it's a pretty diverse list.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking counseling, emotional support, monitoring their progress.
Yeah.
It seems like you're really focused on the whole person.
You're right. And we can't forget about their families either.
Oh, right, of course.
The guide even talks about liaising with families. So you're the link between the care team, the resident, and their loved ones, making sure everybody is informed and involved.
Wow. So there's a whole other layer of communication and empathy there. It makes me wonder, what does a typical day even look like with all of this going on?
Well, that's the great thing about the guide. It actually breaks down typical responsibilities for different stages of this career,
Oh, cool.
from entry level all the way up to managing a whole care facility.
I love a good career progression breakdown. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
What kind of tasks are we talking about at that entry-level stage?
Well, at that stage, it's really about providing direct hands-on support.
Okay.
So think assisting residents with personal care, helping them with meals, making sure they take their medications safely, and all while creating this positive and nurturing atmosphere.
So even from day one, it sounds like you need this balance of practical skills and, that emotional intelligence.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's not just ticking things off a checklist, right?
Right.
It's about doing it all with empathy and understanding, building those relationships with the people you're caring for, becoming a familiar face, a comforting presence in their lives.
And the guide actually shares this great story about a brand new care worker who noticed one resident was really withdrawn and not eating much. And simply by talking to her, the care worker learned the resident really missed her cat.
Aw.
And because of that, they were able to arrange these pet therapy visits, and it made a world of difference in her mood and her appetite.
It's amazing how such a small thing can have such a huge impact on someone's well-being.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's got to be rewarding, right?
Oh, absolutely. And as you progress in your career, those responsibilities, they start to change. You start to do more leading and strategic thinking.
Okay, so let's talk about that next step, of what they call the care worker stage.
Right.
What's that like?
So it seems like the focus shifts a bit here. You're creating individual care plans, you're assisting with physical therapy and working more closely with healthcare professionals.
Nice.
So more responsibility, more of a
Oh.
key player on the care team.
The guide actually mentions this example of a care worker who was really observant and noticed these early signs of dementia in a resident.
Wow.
And by advocating for testing and, early intervention, they were able to make a real difference for that resident's quality of life.
That's what's so important about building those relationships, right? You're in a position to notice those changes and advocate for your residents.
Totally. And speaking of advocating, it seems like the next level up, senior care worker, that's where the leadership aspect really comes in.
You got it. That's where you start supervising other staff, but also taking on more responsibility for the quality of care overall.
Okay, so multiple levels of responsibility there.
For sure. You're advocating for residents' rights,
Mhm.
evaluating care practices, making sure everything runs smoothly and ethically.
So you're leading the team, but still with that core focus on the well-being of the residents. The guide mentions being organized is super important at this level. Sounds pretty demanding.
It definitely can be. You're managing records, you're running meetings, you're handling conflicts, making sure everyone's on the same page and providing the best care possible.
So a lot of juggling, but probably really rewarding when it all comes together.
That's the truth.
It does sound really rewarding, being able to see that direct impact. But the guide doesn't sugarcoat things either.
Right. It definitely takes a certain kind of person.
It seems like there's a lot of emotional weight to this kind of work.
Yeah. You're dealing with life and loss pretty regularly, especially when you're talking about residents facing serious illnesses, end-of-life care, that sort of thing.
I imagine that's something you can't really prepare for.
It's definitely a reality of the job. You form these close bonds with people, and then saying goodbye is never easy. The guide mentions burnout, compassion fatigue. Those are very real concerns in this field.
So how do you deal with that? The guide mentions the physical demands, the long hours, but it doesn't really go into coping mechanisms for the emotional side of things.
Well, that's where it's so important to have a good support system outside of work. Could be family, friends, a therapist, even support groups specifically for caregivers. It's crucial to have an outlet to process those emotions.
It's like you're constantly giving of yourself emotionally, so you've got to find ways to refill your own cup.
Exactly. And it's also about knowing your limits, practicing self-care to avoid getting to that burnout stage.
Self-care, that's so important. What are some things someone could do to manage that emotional weight?
Honestly, it could be anything that helps you relax and recharge. Could be hobbies, exercise, spending time in nature. Some people find meditation helpful, journaling, whatever works for you. The key is making it a priority.
Because if you're burnt out, you can't provide the best care possible, right?
Right. It's about taking care of yourself so you can take care of others.
And I imagine having those connections with colleagues who understand what you're going through must be helpful too.
Absolutely. Sharing experiences, offering support, even just venting to someone who gets it can make a huge difference.
Knowing you're not alone in those challenges.
Exactly. But despite the challenges, the rewards are really something special. Witnessing the impact you have on people's lives, bringing them comfort and companionship, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, that sounds really fulfilling. And as you gain experience and move up in your career, those rewards probably evolve too.
They do. So we talked about the senior care worker level. The next step up is care supervisor. And this is where you really start to focus more on the operational side of things.
Okay, so left direct care and more big picture stuff.
Right. You're managing schedules, making sure everything's compliant with regulations, handling any concerns from residents or families. You're responsible for making sure the whole care environment runs smoothly.
I bet diplomacy skills are essential at that level.
Oh, absolutely. You're managing different personalities, expectations, needs. It's a lot to juggle.
Yep.
And the guide really stresses how important those conflict resolution skills are.
Because you're not just putting out fires, you're also trying to cultivate a positive environment for the residents and the staff.
Exactly. You're setting the tone for the entire care culture. And you're also that link between the frontline staff and the higher-ups, advocating for both sides to make sure everyone's needs are met.
And then at the very top, you've got the care manager role. That's a whole other ball game, right?
It really is. At that level, it becomes about the entire facility. So
Yeah.
budgeting, planning new programs, even dealing with outside organizations like healthcare providers or government agencies.
Wow, so you're basically running a business at that point, but with the well-being of the residents always at the forefront.
Exactly. And it's not just about the numbers either. The guide actually highlights this one care manager who was really passionate about creating a strong social environment in their facility.
Oh, nice.
They started art therapy programs, intergenerational activities, even outings into the community. And it made a huge difference in reducing resident isolation and boosting morale.
That's incredible. It's amazing how one person's vision can really shape the whole culture of a place.
Yeah.
And speaking of shaping things, the guide also talks about how important it is to specialize in this field, especially with all the new technology coming out.
Absolutely. This isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of career path. You can really find your niche, whether it's focusing on dementia care or rehab or even providing culturally sensitive care to specific populations.
You'll love that. It's about combining your passion for caregiving with a specific area you're drawn to. But we can't talk about this field without talking about tech. The technology advances section in the guide was super interesting.
It's really remarkable how much tech is changing, even in a field that's always been so focused on human connection.
For sure. For sure. What kind of things are we talking about here?
Well, think telemedicine for one. So residents can have appointments with doctors remotely without even leaving the facility.
That's amazing,
Yeah.
especially for people who have trouble getting around.
Right. And then there are virtual care platforms that offer all kinds of engaging activities and social interaction for residents, and even AI-powered systems that can monitor their safety and well-being.
Whoa, AI. How does that even work in this context?
Well, imagine you have a sensor in a resident's room. It's not a camera, so their privacy is totally protected. But it can track things like their movement patterns. And if it notices something unusual, like a resident who's normally very mobile is suddenly much less active, That could be an early warning sign that something's up. Maybe they're not feeling well, or a medication is having an unexpected side effect.
Wow. So it's like having an extra set of eyes looking out for them without being intrusive at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all of that means that for someone starting out in this field, being comfortable with technology is becoming more and more important.
It's like tech skills are becoming a core part of providing compassionate care. You need to know how to use these tools to do your job effectively.
Absolutely. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Hmm.
As technology keeps advancing, we're going to see even more incredible tools and resources that will help us provide better, more personalized care for our aging population.
It's amazing how much there is to learn about this field. I mean, we've covered so much ground today, from the day-to-day realities of the job to the bigger picture of career paths and the role of technology. And it's clear that this line of work requires a very specific kind of person.
It does, but for the right person, it can be incredibly rewarding.
So for someone listening who's thinking, this sounds like me, this sounds like something I could be passionate about, what would you say to them? What would be your advice as they start to explore this career path?
I'd say go for it.
Yeah.
Do your research, talk to people who are already in the field. But most importantly, remember that this is about connecting with people, making a difference in their lives. If you go into it with that mindset, you're already on the right track.
It's about compassion, empathy, and that willingness to really show up for people who need it.
I love that.
And while we've given you a lot to think about today, I think the biggest takeaway is that this is a field with so much potential for growth, both personally and professionally.
It really is. And as our population ages, the need for compassionate and skilled caregivers is only going to increase.
So if you're looking for a career that's both meaningful and in demand, this might be the perfect fit for you. And with that, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of residential home, older adult care work. Remember, these are just a starting point. Don't be afraid to dig deeper, ask questions, and most importantly, never stop learning.
That's great advice.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one shaping the future of care for generations to come.